Yo, what's good? Welcome to Kind of Funny Games Daily for July 6th, 2022. I'm your host, Janet Garcia, and joining me is Jared Petty, the legend, the man, the myth, the legend. Welcome.
Woo! Doki doki, glad to be here alongside the crown jewel of the Kind of Funny tiara, Janet Garcia. I mean, this is just,
Oh,
I
thank
don't think
you.
we've ever gotten to do this Kind of Funny together before, have we? This is our first time?
No, this is our first time doing it, and it's our, I think, second time doing content together from
Yeah,
your show.
right. The aforementioned Top 100 Games podcast. Get that plug in, kids. But yeah, Janet, it is like anytime I'm here, I'm just tickle pink. This is my favorite thing in the world to do because I'm a terrible narcissist. But also the opportunity to finally be here with you because I have admired your work literally from the very first time I saw it. And as you have continued through and become more and more of a hosting and personality oriented creator, you just you're so good. And I love watching you and hearing you. And so the chance to be here and be a tiny little part of what you're creating makes me feel really happy.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm glad you could join us. For those who somehow have been living under a rock and don't know who you are, Jared, what is the elevator pitch of who you are? And please, put the modesty aside. Like, this is your time. Who are you? What do you do? How can people keep up with you?
I think I am probably the video game industry's only former pastor turned Japanese school teacher turned network administrator turned IT guy turned IGN video game person turned EA Star Wars person turned kind of funny emeritus occasional host turned uh, person who did Google stuff for a while turned limited run games publications
Yeah.
project manager. So what I do at limited run is work on all kinds of things. We do neat games with collectibles and stuff like that. I work on the book end of things because we also make books, which is a really neat job because I get to edit books for a living now, and that's really cool. I dabble a little bit now in the world of development, which is kind of fun. Very excited about that. And yeah, so I think I'm kind of a tumbleweed. I don't have a career. I just have a miasma of weird experiences that add up to having absolutely no savings and having had a lot of fun.
You
Um,
have a career. Don't sell yourself short, Jared. Just because it's a unique career for your journey doesn't mean it's not a career, Jared Petty.
Hey, you're a Rolling
what
Stone.
what's that, Janet?
You're a Rolling Stone.
I am a Rolling Stone, and I gather no moss. But I also unfortunately gather no 401k. So those two things together don't work
That's
out
the
so well.
thing. It'll creep up on you. Cause I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking back at my life and I'm like, how are we gonna land this plane? But you know what? It's gonna happen. You'll get onto that boat, and it'll be just fine. But yeah, you've floated around to so many different things. I feel like you've lived like multiple lives in the industry, which I think is really cool personally. Like I think that's one of the best like styles to do a career. Obviously, like if you can be a for lifer somewhere, that sounds a lot less stressful. But as someone that also has been bouncing around different projects and doing a lot of stuff, I think it's really cool looking at someone like you and seeing the trajectory. And I think your willingness to go into the directions that you're pulled in. I think so often there's such a big hesitancy in changing things up, but like seeing your career and having conversations with you, like I think it's so admirable that you have been so willing to venture into the unknown and then totally kill it when you get there.
Well, I mean, you know more about that than anybody, I think. You have like 7 jobs. You're good at all of them,
Thanks.
and it's one of the things I really admire about you. And I think I have a lot of fun just going back and forth because I do feel a sense of context with you. I didn't plan this. I never planned on working in video games. It was an accident. This was a hobby. I didn't even start working in games till I was over 30, and
Mm-hmm.
it was not the plan. I just liked writing about video games for fun, and that turned into a thing. I'm so lucky, and so many people open so many doors, including, I mean, the best job I've ever had. I've had a lot of great jobs in video games. I'm in a great job right now, but the best job I've ever had was a Kind of Funny, where y'all just kicked the door down and let me do all kinds of fun things, and I rewarded you by abandoning
It
you.
it
Uh,
wasn't working at IGN sitting next to me and watching me play Final Fantasy 1 really bad.
I feel like we bring the story up every time I talk with you, Barrett, and you don't deserve. You didn't play old RPGs. You didn't know that you had to equip your weapons and
But
armor,
I
and that
did.
you
That's
would
the
grind
thing.
for.
That's the thing, Jared. I grew up with Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy
Oh, well, never
7.
mind. You're like, this game's so hard, and I was like, Barrett, you've been playing for 3 hours with no weapons. Like, yeah, of course it's
Granted,
hard.
it had been a long time since I had played a JRPG.
Maybe you're
Yeah.
just really hardcore, Barrett. You know, that's like the true experience is just going in unequipped and just rolling around.
There's
and
only
seeing what
one way to
happens.
kill chaos, and it's with your fists.
I mean,
There's
if you're the
definitely
black belt,
there's no experience like being at like I guess really any office maybe like I don't know but IGN specifically and playing a game and then having people just like casually walk up and they're like, oh, it's a let's play moment for me now. I was like, don't come here. I'm like rolling around the sand like I'm trying to find like secret passageways. I don't know how to play the game yet. You're asking me questions. I feel very on right now. Just keep walking. Like don't that was the worst about having a desk that like faced outward where people could just kind of at any moment just see what you were doing. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of pressure.
I was so lucky I had that little corner. Like I started with an out-facing desk, but the moment I got away into that corner, I was just like, you know what? No one can see how bad I am at knack, and I'm so glad because that would be disgraceful to be seen as bad at knack. Yeah, as we all know.
There's always more time. There's always time for knack. Just like there's always time to talk about today's stories, which include God of War Ragnarok's release date, Forspoken's delay, and so much more. Because this is Kinda Funny Games Daily, where each and every weekday at 10 a.m. live right here on twitch.tv/kindafunnygames. If you're watching live, you can correct us when we get stuff wrong by going to kindafunny.com/you're wrong. If you don't want to watch live, you can watch later on youtube.com/kindafunnygames, roosterteeth.com, or listen later on podcast services around the globe by searching for Kinda Funny Games Daily. You can use Epic Creator Code Kinda Funny on all Epic Store and Epic Endgame purchases like Rocket League and Fortnite to help support Kinda Funny. To be part of the show, head over to patreon.com/kindafunnygames, where bronze members or above get to write in, and silver members or above get the show ad-free along with the exclusive daily post show. Some housekeeping for y'all. We got merch of the month. It's the Tropical Collection, and it's live now. Designed by Nick at Campfire Design Studio. You can head over to kindafunny.com/store, and the Porty hats will be restocked on next Friday? Friday, July 15th.
Here we go, Hammer.
Already in love with that.
Game, Hammer. Come on.
Focus!
Whoa, check out those guys in the new Kinda Funny summer merch.
Those new t-shirt colors are hot. And did you see those shades? Are those official Kinda Funny sunglasses?
Woo, let's go.
You better believe it. But wait, what about those sick beach towels in 4 different colors?
Come on, baby.
And check out those new pins on the brimless hat, jabroni.
That's enough playing with the boys for me. I'm gonna go check that merch out at kindafunny.com/store.
kindafunny.com/store.
That was a lot. That was an experience. Also, it kind of got like Hungry Eyes vibes at the end with the instrumental. But yeah, so if you want to live out what that just was, head over to kindafunny.com/store and get that summertime merch. Screencast is also popping off today. Our reactions to the Clerks 3 trailer should be live soon. And later we have our review of Miss Marvel Episode 5 over on youtube.com/kindafunny and on podcast services around the globe when you search for Kinda Funny Screencast. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Fargo, Brady. Today we're brought to you by Chime and Shopify, but we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's begin what is and forever will be the Roper Report. It's time for some news. We have 7 stories today.
Baker's dozen.
Starting with the lead one, when I woke up today and it was like, today is going to be a good day. We got God of War Ragnarok's release date. It's here. It exists. It's happening. And was kind of just dropped a little bit unceremoniously on Twitter, just there with the image and then just a little bit of text saying God of War Ragnarok on PS4 and PS5, November 9th, 2022. It's officially coming. Again, that's PS5, PS4 on November 9th, 2022. Mark your calendars. I didn't have time today, but I'm going to go re-download the game, experience it. You know, people were talking about, are you doing a replay or not? Like, I'm super excited for this. And they mentioned, we're thrilled to share our release date and the brand new God of War Ragnarok father and son CG trailer with all of God of War fans who have been eagerly awaiting the news. And then they have this short kind of cinematic clip, and in it, you know, you see Kratos like fall, you know, down below. Atreus calls out to him, and there's sort of a bunch of different combat going on at the bottom, and there's a little bit of dialogue tossed in there as well, where they're, you know, talking about when you're at your weakest and the fear and doubt are a burden too heavy to bear. Remember this, you're not alone. It's that crazy shot of that giant ass wolf. So I'm here for the combat. I'm here for giant wolf, and I really like this as I think just a bit of like tonal set dressing to that release date. It definitely doesn't, reinvent the wheel on what we know about the game, but I think it, gives you a little bit of flavor, and it's like a nice pairing, I think, for that release date. But before we get into it, I do want to shout out too that there's 4 editions of God of War Ragnarok that are going to be available. The pre-order starts July 15th for those at 10 a.m. local time. That's Eastern for North America. And you can head over to the PlayStation blog to read more about that and the different versions. They have like a Wild Collector's Edition. They have an edition even above that called the Jotner Edition that has like, music. You get the digital download code, which I know can be contentious for some people not getting that code with the collector's editions. But yeah, you can get like a steel book, carvings, a dice set, a replica of the Molnir. Like, it's a bunch of wild stuff if you're interested. It's funny because it also includes that PS4 theme, and I'm like, where's the PS5 theme? Where are our themes? But head over to the blog for all those details. You get a bunch of like digital items as well. So if you are interested in going all in on this, maybe start to think about what version you want to end up buying, or even if you just want to do a standard pre-order. But to lead us into our conversation, Jared, I want to bring in a question from Jake Bakes Cakes, who writes in and says, "Good morning, Janet, and whoever had the privilege to join you." Well, that's Jared. Welcome, Jared. God of War Ragnarok has a release date, and all the weirdo assholes online can finally calm down. If only, Jake. What can this game do to avoid the sequel problem of this feels pretty familiar, sort of the one that Horizon Forbidden West in some ways faced? In other words, what could the sequel do to help the modern God of War franchise retain its masterpiece status? Jared, we turn our lonely eyes to you. What can this do to avoid that pitfall of being too much of the same?
So the joy of a sequel, the tension point of a sequel, is that it's got to be quite a bit of the same. That's what we want. We pretend we don't want more of the same, but the fact of the matter is that even with the most brave and divergent sequels, we're still dealing with the same characters, the legacy plot lines from the first game. We're going to want those best parts to stand out and shine. So we're going to want to feel those epic combat mechanics. So much of what works about the first God of War is technical design. It's that weird thing where you are not, and I'm not talking about the force feedback or haptic feedback on the controller. I'm talking about feeling the smack of that axe through the buttons, just through the way the game's designed, where your body is literally like tensing up at that moment. So much of it's in that. So we do want those things. How do we make it better? I think the smartest way to do it is to do what the best sequels do and grow with us. God of War is a story already about family and growing as a person. The first one was especially about a father growing. This game, I suspect, will largely be about a son growing. This boy is a different person than he was only a couple years ago. I just spent a week with my godkids, who are now 2.5. Last time I saw them, they were 1.5. Let me tell you what, 1 year in the life of a child is unfathomably transformative. So the boy that we're going to be hanging out with in this game, we will recognize him to a point, but he's grown. But that's okay, because so have we. When we started God of War, the first one, we were used to Kratos running around with his blades and smacking people up and being angry, and that's what Kratos did. By the end of that game, we were like, "Oh my God, my heart, we love you. You are super dad, but also bad, but also we love you anyway. And also you're kind of a weird analog for Cory Balrog, but anyway, that's a whole other can of worms."
That's the best kind of game dad, though, right? It's always a complicated relationship with your game dad.
And now we're going to have, I think, a complicated relationship with game dad and game son. I think we're going to grow in that. I think we're going to see what happens when people grow up, and that includes the tensions that come. The problem with Kratos and the boy here is that our boy, Kratos, kind of got what he wanted. The boy did grow. Well, okay, that means becoming your own person. And I suspect that that is very much going to be a theme of this game. And the problem with someone you love becoming your own person is that they change on you.
Mm.
The people we love the most, when they become their own people, oh, that is a violent, terrifying crucible of an experience, and not every relationship survives. So how do we do it? As the audience has grown through the first story, and as we've grown through the years, so likewise the story about growth continues and grows in a natural way. Instead of going The Last of Us 2 route, where one was about love, another was about hate. I expect this to fully be a story about love, but it's about how love is messy and complicated. That's how they nail it, in my opinion. I've talked too long. Your thoughts, Janet?
Especially, just really quick, just to bounce off that, especially when the love is that the big wolf boy is, your grandson, and it's your son's son, because that's got to be Fenrir, if we're gonna be honest, and like this is pretty like common knowledge for this lore and stuff. This was covered in a bunch of different things, but yeah, that's. There's definitely going to be some really cool familial things that they do here, Jared. I'm definitely on board with what you're saying here.
Yeah, you mentioned that you talked too long. I don't think you talked long enough. Like, people are eating it up in the chat, and I was like hooked on your cell for this game. Like, I got emotional hearing you talk about that, and I think that speaks to also the quality of the storytelling in the game, and how God of War really was an experience that had different layers in a way that I think we hadn't seen before from the franchise. You mentioned like the origins of, Kratos is a pissed off person who just kills a bunch of people, and you still have that element. You have that flavor of violence and grit and gore and sort of almost like the grinding of machinery against each other. Like, there's no cartilage there. It's bone on bone, but in a really good way. And that's always what God of War has been to me, as someone who played the original franchise back, when it released back when. And you still had that, but you also had heart, you had layers. I mean, I remember playing God of War 2018 for the first time, probably pretty shortly after it launched, and having that glorious moment of not realizing that I was out of the cutscene. That we're in the game now, and being like, oh man, you just kind of pulled me in with you. And I was just so enraptured by, I think, those opening hours and so many other moments to come with the world serpent. And, I was into the puzzle solving. I know some people maybe weren't as keen on it. I love the puzzles that they had in that game. But yeah, I think your discussion of growth from both a player perspective and a storytelling perspective with these characters is just so much more, I think, interesting and poignant than me being like, maybe more enemy variety. We felt the Valkyries a lot. But yeah, I think some of those elements too. And yeah, I think just a little bit of difference can be enough. I think of, when I think of my favorite, originals to sequels, I can't help but think of Portal 1 to Portal 2, and Portal 2 doesn't play insanely different than Portal 1. Obviously there's the gel is the big change, but that and I think so much of what they learned in design and how good they are at storytelling just became so much more additive that it was enough to sort of push it over the edge. I do think that's a rarity, but I don't necessarily think, much like you, that it needs to be a complete reinvention, but it needs to be, I think, a solid continuation that feels like this really added something. We needed this here. This kind of completes or further rounds out the experience that we had with that first game. And, I would lightly argue, too, with the Jake Bakes Cakes bringing up Horizon's sort of problem of being too familiar. Obviously, that's an argument some people make. I didn't feel that way about Horizon. I felt like, yep, we had more of the same with, in terms of combat. Obviously, it's still going to be bow and arrow heavy combat. You're fighting machines. You're hitting the parts. But I think they actually did a fantastic job at growing the systems that they had, with very few exception to maybe 2 changes that I'm like, where's the golden fast travel pack? Yeah, I am hard pressed to find, I've not found too many people, even just casually online, that think the first game is better than the second game. You may think maybe it's not enough of a deviation, or it didn't grow in enough ways, but I do think that Horizon Forbidden West was a marked improvement, and I would love to see God of War have some level of that. I think maybe not to as big of a degree, because you're going masterpiece via, versus ideally another masterpiece, while Horizon, I think, is a lot more in that 8 or 9 range for most players. But yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to see that this is coming out now. Are you surprised at all that we got the release date now in the way that we did, or that we got it for this year? Did you have any doubt kind of going into this whole thing about whether or not it was going to hit?
So one of the weird parts of having been able to work on the other side of the industry is that I've gotten to see what goes into decisions like this, and it's a lot. And no matter what we guess from the outside, we are probably wrong, because there are so many moving parts. It can be a combination of technical capability, marketing capability, staffing capability, competitive calendars, executive ego, all these things can go into it. And God knows what the deciding factors are. Honestly, what I like to imagine is the fact they just tweeted it out is just the poor social media person being like, fuck it, let's just send a tweet. But that's not how it really happens. The decision on everybody loves to control a message, and this has been just such a grease fire of. I mean, this just gamers at their worst, being horrible people when they want to. I can't remember who it was that said, people on the internet are eager to lose their shit, and boy, was this an example of that. So I think that this was probably a combination of damage control and a message that they always wanted to get out. And they just had to get alignment between different departments and make sure that they had the technical capability to make the shipment work. For all we know, they couldn't get God of War labels printed for physical copies. And that's the reason for the delay. Things like that are often what it is, and they will never, ever tell you. And so they get it to us. They want to make money, and that means they want to sell the game before Christmas. They are trying to get you this video game, people. They are trying. If anything's stopping them, it's because they can't, not because they don't want to.
Right.
And that's something I've seen again and again and again.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I definitely had a lot of doubts, I think, leading into this year, whether or not they'd hit 2022, that have slowly dissipated as has been, little leaks here and there, little teases, reassurances. But ultimately, I'm just excited to have a date and something solid to look forward to in terms of okay, now I can start to kind of backwards plan. Because like I said, I'm going to, re-download God of War, dig into it, and kind of prime myself for this experience. And I'm excited to see this drop too, I think this year, just from a conversation. I think it is a little bit in some ways silly that we constantly couch all of our gaming conversations around timelines and years. It's kind of hey, this, and I'm definitely fall victim of this as well, because I'm always chasing what's out now. Let me talk about the best games that you can, get this year, or the best stories, or the best, whatever, listicle it is. But to have it in that conversation, I think against Horizon Forbidden West, against Elden Ring, it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be exciting. I live for the drama of it. And it's cool to see a player this big, I think, step into the ring right under the wire, because, obviously by December, people are kind of already, checked out. They might be on holiday. They've kind of already done all those things. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see where that lands in the conversation for the year and the franchise. And there's going to be something really cool to play on PlayStation, so that's exciting. But
yeah, I'm a hyperbolic person. I think it goes with the whole video game church part. We all get together and watch trailers and get excited, and the games come out and we review them and get excited, and then we have best of ever game lists and talk about them and get excited, and everybody. It's just so much
100
fun.
games.
Hey, there we go. There we go.
Is God of War on that list?
Not yet. Not yet. Now.
But now maybe you wait for Ragnarok to get on there, so that you just don't have it on there.
I know, there's too many good games. Talking about that list for a second, I haven't updated the show in several months, and that's just been, for anybody that's watching that's a part of it, that's just been my mental health collapsing I don't know, like a melting flan or something. What's the Idiazard and a flan in a cupboard? I think it was the term he used. I'm ready again to finally work on it, but that's been away for a while. So if people are wondering hey, Jared, why don't you do that anymore? I went nuts for a while, and I had to get myself back together. So there's that. Hey, it's Jared talking about himself instead of video games, but I thought it was odd to bring it up and not say something, and now I'm realizing this was not the place at the time. Let's talk about video games.
No, it's always a place of a time. But I think what's so cool about your show, and this happens with anyone that makes anything, it ends at some point, which I think is kind of horrifying. And you never really, and you usually don't know when it's going to end. When I did my last episode of Game Monsters Weekly, a news show I did for a year, I was I just didn't come back. And I'm I'm not doing this project anymore. And I just didn't say anything about it. And it's like that a lot of times. I think what's really cool about your show is how evergreen it is, and that, hey, if you are just hearing about that show now, even if you didn't make another episode, it's still an awesome show. It's still a show I recommend. And I think there's still immense value in that. And that's what's really cool about projects like that, because they're always still cool to hit up and listen to. And if or when it ever comes back, that's just gravy.
It will. So I got a half-edited episode sitting on a computer right now. I just need to get it out.
I relate to that so hard. I have an unboxing video and a build video of like my Miss Pac-Man machine from like 3 years ago that I've never I haven't had the heart to delete because I'm like, I spent so much time recording this, but I haven't had the energy to want to do anything with. So it's just like, I'm like, whenever I make this, like, I'm not going to look anything like this. I might not even live in this apartment by the time, if this video ever sees the light of day, but I do have that in there.
But in this case, I don't, I'm being too light. So I guess I owe people an explanation. I don't take people's interest in what I create for granted. People have shown me enormous support, listening and encouraging, and I don't take that for granted. I was not well enough to do this and my day job at the same time for a while. I had to choose for a bit, and that's why I stopped. And I've spent the time that I would have spent working on the show doing the things it takes to get better, seeking help. And I have not been transparent about that because even though I talk a lot about my mental health, it's still hard sometimes. You get tired after a while of telling people, well, guess what, everybody, I fell apart again. That's hard. Having a chronic illness is not fun, but I did take the time away to do the best I know to get better, and it's still a struggle. Also, my physical health's been really bad this year, so those have not helped one another. I got one eye with a scratch on it, and the other's full of blood right now, so that's fun. Yeah, there we are. Pity time with Jared. Okay, we'll stop.
No, I mean, I think it's awesome that you can, obviously you don't owe anyone anything, but I think being transparent is so important. And I'm really glad to hear that given those two options that you chose the right one, right? That you chose the one that's about you and your health and what you need for your life. Because at the end of the day, like the content's going to be there whenever you're ready for it. So you want to make sure that you are ready to do it before you go back.
Yeah, I let it slip too long. You say I don't owe anybody anything, but I feel that I do. People have made some kind commitments to me, and I do. I think at least owe them the dignity of an explanation. So I should have done it before now. When I'm really sick, it's hard to communicate, especially if it makes me feel shameful. But that doesn't excuse the fact that I think I made the less than perfect choice there. So instead, I'm just going to make a show again so people can be happy. That's or at least I hope they're happy. I think they'll like it. I like it. I
Yeah.
enjoy doing it when I'm well. So
Yeah, I'm excited for you to feel, well enough to go ahead and get back to it. But yeah, Jared, I don't think you give yourself enough credit for how intensely self-aware and empathetic and kind and wise you are. So yeah, but anyway, we can go in circles forever because I will keep giving you praise and you'll be like, Janet, that's
really
really
all
nice
this
to
is
say, but you
about.
shouldn't really do that.
I'm actually just milking you right now, like for compliments. That's really what I do. The whole thing.
Oh,
It's just,
yeah.
yeah, I'm just dependent on other people's validation for any feeling of importance. So that's what it is. But I
We
do
have,
notice that we have other things on this list here. We should
yeah,
probably be
let's.
telling the people about the breaking news in video games.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get back to it. And this one ties in really well with a conversation we were just having in terms of what goes into the planning and the release of things. So let's talk about Forspoken being delayed, another unceremonious Twitter post that dropped today. They had tweeted an image that had this text on it. They said, as a result of ongoing discussions with key partners, we have made the strategic decision to move the launch date of Forspoken to January 24th, 2023. All game elements are now complete and development is in its final polishing phase. We would like to thank you for your continued support and patience on this journey. Your excitement for the game inspires us every day, and we cannot wait to share more about Forspoken with you later this summer. And I want to pull in a question that Grezik writes in on Patreon saying, hey, Janet and Jared, Square has delayed Forspoken into January. Based on the wording of the statement, it seems like this is being done for business reasons rather than development issues. This makes sense given the already jam-packed fourth quarter Square has, and that Ragnarok is coming a month later. My question is, how does Forspoken releasing on January 24th inform your opinion on when we'll see Crisis Core, and which game do you think will come out first? Thanks for all you do. And for context, that's Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, which is already up for pre-order and is currently expected to probably come by the end of the year. I think it's also couched as winter, so I feel like there's a little bit of space for a bit of slip. But Jared, what's your read on this delay? And do you think we're going to see Crisis Core before or after Forspoken? Or how do you think those two games are kind of in conversation with each other in terms of a business strategy sense?
Okay, so I don't have visibility to Square's books, obviously, so I could be completely wrong. I suspect Crisis Core still comes out this year. It's a
Same.
Final Fantasy game. I think it's got it's if people are going to buy it, are going to buy it whether or not they buy Ragnarok. Whereupon Forspoken is something entirely new, and I think they want to give a new IP plenty of room. They don't want to launch a new IP in the middle of these juggernauts that are exploding all around it. Crisis Core could even end up cannibalizing Forspoken if they're too close together. I'm much more likely to play Forspoken now that's coming out in January. I love January games. And I can say that this decision on the business end absolutely is going to make me more likely to play it. Because I think it had just gotten lost. I've been like, it's a game I don't really have time for. Crisis Core will be fine in winter, and it'll do okay. Crisis Core, obviously, the PSP Classic is a hell of a video game, and everybody should play it. And yeah, that's my thoughts. You, Jenna?
I'm surprised you guys think that this is coming this year. Crisis
Yeah.
Core, at least. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you guys think it's this year?
Because I feel like they've kind of said that it would. I feel like the winter is
they said this winter, and I feel like because they said this winter and not this fall, this holiday, that tells me that they're looking at this at Crisis Core at least being latest March of next year. And I honestly think now that Forspoken is coming in January, that tells me that Crisis Core is probably coming in March.
I think it'd be before. I feel like March is late for winter. I mean, not if you're in the Midwest, but like generally.
I think
I
Square
feel like
is
the
one of
winter
those
is to give
ones they
space if you
use
need to
the
move it.
actual technical dates to like define what winter and spring is, because that's
like based
that's
on
something a
animals
Square
and
Enix
charts
thing.
and things. Yeah, I feel like by this year, but that's really just a feeling. It's not necessarily based on anything more than that. Yeah, I feel like a late December. Chat's saying winter is December 21st to March 21st.
Just saying, Janet. Just
Man.
saying.
Okay, I'm telling you,
I'm gonna go with this year. Why not? I'm gonna go with December.
So, are we doing a pizza bet? What's
I'm
going on
feeling
here?
foggy.
I don't want to. Oh, go ahead.
Like, how would that even work? Across, like, I just Venmo you the money. You know what I mean? I'm not like there.
Yeah, or we just hit each other up and be like, hey, what's a pizza spot near you? And then you buy a medium pizza and you send it over. I've done this with Andrea before as well.
Pizza is literally the most deliverable food on earth. Like that, this seems like not a problem.
That's probably true. I've never thought about what's the second most deliverable food on earth, Jared, do you think?
After pizza?
Mm-hmm.
You're in the States, Chinese food probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be that's where my
Can
mind
we make
goes.
this tier list at some point? The most deliverable food.
I mean, delivery Chinese is somehow better than like eating Chinese in the restaurant sometimes. If it comes in the little hot container and it's at that perfect temperature when you open the little paper wax thing up, like it's just so good. It's so good.
It's also like made to store already. But before we move on from Chinese food and Forspoken, so yeah, you mentioned you're gonna play this when it comes out. What's your excitement level for it? I feel like it's been kind of hot and cold. I think the conversation around Forspoken as of so far. So are you like more optimistic, more pessimistic?
All right. So I didn't want to kill chaos, and my main thing, Janet, is something new from Square.
Yeah.
So right there, I just want to give them money because they tried something, and I want to play it. I don't know if it's going to be good. It's got dragons in it. Usually that's enough for me.
It also has like, crazy abilities. Like the traversal seems fun. Like I too am like, I'm a little bit hesitant. And I've been burned before, but like I am always ready to get hurt again.
Yeah.
And I'm ready for this to hurt
What if
me.
it's me? What if it's
it.
wonderful? What if it's just a fun little like action adventure? And it's
What if it's like Control but with dragons?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And hopefully better performance at launch. But why? What if? What if? Why not?
And I love dragons. Dragons are bodacious. Like that's something I miss. Casey DeFreitas, our former mutual coworker. He and I would talk dragons for hours. I would just any game. I'm still holding out for Scalebound.
Yeah,
someday.
I knew. Yep, I knew you were gonna mention Scalebound. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I feel like it has the potential to be good, but it also has the potential to be maybe a little bit too empty. I don't know, but I'm willing to roll the dice, and I'm just like you. I'm always excited for something new. I'll take a new, not as good game over almost like a known quantity good game. I was like, let's party with Doctor Strange. Like, I am ready for it. Now let's move on to our next story, which is UK regulator investigating Microsoft-Activision Blizzard acquisition. This comes from GameIndustry.biz, who writes, the Competition and Markets Authority is officially investigating Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, the UK regulator confirmed today. As with all merger reviews, this investigation will consider whether the deal could harm competition or lead to worse outcomes for consumers. For example, through higher prices, lower quality, or reduced choice. The CMA has said, adding that it is accepting third-party opinions on the deal through July 20th. The CMA has until September 1st to complete the phase of the investigation in which it determines whether the deal could hurt competition. If the CMA decides the deal is anti-competitive, then it would conduct a more in-depth assessment and allow the companies to propose actions that would address the concerns with the deal. The regulator acknowledged that some of its counterparts around the world are looking into the deal and will communicate with them as appropriate. The acquisition was announced in January, with Microsoft agreeing to pay almost $69 billion for the publisher behind Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. Microsoft expects the deal to close in its fiscal 2023, which began last week. Jared, react.
It's non-competitive. It's Microsoft. That's their entire MO since like 1980. Like, that's what they do. Microsoft, I mean, you hear this like hinted about, Microsoft is eating the video game industry right now. And it's not just acquisitions, it's Game Pass. They simply have, thanks to the fact that they're not just a video game company, that they're one of the world's largest, best funded cloud operating system and software companies, they can lose so much money that they can just drive everyone around them out of business or into irrelevancy or into a position where they become an eventual either forced partner or acquisition. You know, I'm not saying Microsoft's going to buy Sony someday, but Microsoft is well on its way to forcing Sony into a position where it must work with Microsoft. And it's happening very, very quickly, and it's happening non-competitively. In any world where you weren't allowed to act like a monopoly, Game Pass as it currently exists couldn't exist. Or there would be some sort of penalty to subsidize that capability in other companies or to balance things out. And now I'm getting into stuff that sounds crazy. But remember that we live in a capitalistic hellscape where companies are allowed to do pretty much anything they want. So I love Microsoft. I love Xbox. I think they make amazing stuff. But they are absolutely one of the least competitive companies on the planet Earth. That is their MO. That is all they have ever done. And no one cares in government because there's so much money to be made. That's my thought. Microsoft should not be allowed to purchase Activision in a world where we cared about competition. Already the market is far too consolidated into too few companies. I mean, Lord, we probably should have never gotten past the point that you could market a single sports franchise to one company. You know, that we probably should have forced even that to be diversified. But it's not going to happen because we're really picky about a regulation. We have a Fed so that our economy doesn't collapse, barely. But other than that, we just kind of let things happen that are probably not good for competition. That was a long rant there. Janet, your thoughts?
I mean, I think you've said it really well. Like, this is, you know, I think we talked about this a lot, like at length when it was announced, on whether or not like I think this is good or bad for the industry. And there was definitely a lot of, I think, light ire, I think, in some sectors of the internet of being like, oh, especially, you know, meeting on a PlayStation podcast, they're like, if PlayStation did this, you'd be super excited. I know I have a PlayStation shirt on too, so I'm drinking out of a fucking PS5 mug, so I look like such a goddamn shill. But I stand by that I would have said this regardless, because it is too much. And I like, you know, I've said this before, but I like us having sort of third party kind of neutral ground in some ways. And I like the diversity in platforms. Like, sure, it's, you know, fiscally more inconvenient to like have everything split, right? If I just had one crazy PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo PC, then it's like, oh, I'll drop 500 or grand on that and I have access to every game that's ever made on the face of the earth. But I like there being different players in the space, offering different things, coming up with different ways to market their system or their company, whether it's Game Pass, whether it's PlayStation Plus, which even though, you mentioned the problems that Game Pass has, and definitely it's not, I think, a magic wand to things. I definitely have questions on some elements of, will we look back on Game Pass as a net negative or a net positive? Like, how does it work with development payout? Like, what's the best scenarios for developers in different deals? Like, how do you, who makes it? Like, which one decides whether or not it nets out well? Like, how often do we get to know that? Not very often, because it's all behind the scenes. So it's I hope this is good. I assume so as much. But yeah, I like it having these kind of different avenues. And I definitely am worried about the consolidation of everything. And not just because I'm on a PlayStation podcast where we'd have one ultimate, fusion podcast when the industry finally gets all eaten up. But I do think it's the way that things are ultimately going. I don't know how extreme it'll get, but I am enjoying the ride until we enter Oblivion, which might not even happen in my lifetime. So then I don't know,
I don't know if it ends up Oblivion. It's just a risk. I mean, Game Pass is an amazing deal. It just is. It's an incredible way to play video games. And I love stuff that's consumer friendly. And Game Pass, good Lord, is consumer friendly. But it's so consumer friendly because of completely non-competitive business practices on Microsoft's part. That's the other end of it. Maybe 10 years from now, you have this enlightened Microsoft that has, it's got its fingers in Nintendo and it's got its fingers in Sony and everything's all cool and it's great. But what if it's like Activision? What if that's what it turns into? There's only one video game company and it's fucking Activision. It's that culture, it's that creativity or lack thereof. I work for a mid-sized publisher of physical video games and cool collector's editions at Limited Run. And one of the reasons I do that is because the little to mid-sized games we often publish really are built on a wink and a dream. It's kind of like that tweet I saw where somebody said, AAA games, what if more guns? And I wish I could credit the tweet. Whereupon, indie games, what if I were a fly? What if a bear ran a bed and breakfast? What if I want to live in that second world, but I'm worried that the more we move toward the one world order of video games, we might be moving toward that first because guns sell and little flies sell less. And I don't want to live in that world.
This took I feel like a dark turn, but yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely it's a heavy conversation in terms of I think where the market is going. Before we round the story, do you think there's any chance then that this deal doesn't go through? I feel like it's probably just going to go through. But obviously, this is part of the process,
I think that this deal, in comparison to the other destructive political and business things that have happened over the last 20 years, is so minor. Oh yeah, this is the least harmful thing to the planet Earth relative to the things that we've already allowed possible. Yes, this will absolutely happen. And by the way, I mean, Microsoft currently taking over Activision is probably a good thing for most people at Activision because Activision's leadership is garbage and horrible, and Microsoft's is less so. But we'll see what happens, from a business end after that.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of what's happening with business, remember that you can go to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames where you can get the show ad free. And speaking of ads, let us tell you about our sponsors.
I love that sound. It's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business. So upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility, and I know the Kinda Funny store at kindafunny.com/store uses Shopify to sell all our merch, including all those cool Portillo shirts you guys have been so great about supporting with. I love how Shopify has the tools and resources that make it easy for any business to succeed from down the street to around the globe. Reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps. Go to shopify.com/KFgames, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/KFgames right now, shopify.com/KFgames. chime.com/kfgames. No one likes waiting on a paycheck, especially when you've got bills due. Good thing there's Chime. Now you can get your paycheck up to 2 days early with direct deposit. That's up to 2 more days to save, pay bills, and generally just feel good about your money situation. But Chime is more than just about getting paid early. It's also an award-winning mobile app, checking account, debit card, and optional savings account. So what are you waiting for? Hopefully not your paycheck. Get started with Chime today. Applying for a free account takes less than 2 minutes. Get started at chime.com/kfgames. That's chime.com/kfgames. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank NA, members FDIC. Early access to direct deposit funds depends on your payer.
Now let's talk really briefly about the Splatoon OLED model that is dropping. This is going to be out on August 26th ahead of Splatoon 3's launch, which is happening September 9th. That is the current release date. And it's sort of, this is a fun one to kind of take a look at because besides the fact that I'm always down for like console models based on IP, especially IP that I really love, which you can argue is a lot of Nintendo IP because I'm a Nintendo stan a little bit. But I think this looks great. It's got like, I think too, Splatoon has such a fun style to it in its sort of playful graffiti streetwear-esque kind of look to it. And it just have me wondering if I should get the OLED now. I really haven't been playing my Switch like at all. I have my Switch here and I have the Animal Crossing version, but it's like, do I want to buy, like a third Switch? Like it's kind of it's becoming a lot for someone that hasn't really booted it up in quite some time, but I know for a fact that I'm going to be hitting up Splatoon 3 as well. So maybe now's the time. And I do want to shout this out really quickly too, in relation to some Switch Pro rumors that have been kind of re-swirling. I feel like that's going to continue until we either get a Switch Pro or a second Switch gets announced, and then we'll be like, I guess we never got the Switch Pro. But then even then, like, what if a year into the Switch 2, they drop a Switch Pro? Like, Nintendo might, right? They're the type. But I want to shout out this tweet from Kit from the Kit and Krista podcast, who sort of quote tweeted a post from Game Explain saying, like, Nintendo Switch and OLED trailers have gone private. Is Switch Pro incoming? That was sort of their tagline for that video. And Kit had added some context to it, saying these major videos typically have music or actors which are licensed for use for a year, and they need to be renewed or taken down. Switch OLED was announced almost a year ago today when he posted that, which was yesterday. This is most likely nothing. And while nothing is necessarily set in stone until it is, right? I think that kind of commentary in relation to seeing the Splatoon OLED model was kind of just a bit of a reminder that, hey, Nintendo is very much selling the Switch OLED. And like, will they sell more stuff later? That remains to be seen. But at this point, I think the Splatoon OLED model dropping right after that kind of just reconfirms that, hey, they still want you to buy the Switch OLED, that the Switch OLED isn't necessarily going to be obsolete maybe anytime super soon, as much as people want a more souped-up Switch. But Jared, what's your Switch experience been like? Do you have an OLED? Do you have any like custom consoles?
No, I don't have any custom. Well, I have a custom body for my PS5, but Switch, I still have my day one Switch. And I also have, I still have my day one, and I also have a Switch Lite. I decided on that instead of the OLED. Because I'm a big old nerd and I wanted the D-pad for certain games. That's really what it came down to, was I wanted to be doing handheld mode D-pad for certain games I was playing. The OLED's beautiful. I've seen it. It's gorgeous. My thought is, with the supply chain issues that are still going on, COVID is very much still affecting, and economic issues are very much still affecting a lot of stuff in video games. I see no reason for Nintendo to push out any significant new hardware beyond a cosmetic change past the OLED until they are absolutely forced to. Right now is not a great time to launch a console, so why would they? They don't need it. They're selling Switches like hotcakes still. They have more cash than they know what to do with. They're fine. They're going to wait, I think, as late as they possibly can, both so whatever they're cooking up next can have the most powerful hardware possible, based on iterating on it. As the longer they wait, the longer a long tail it's going to have. So yeah, just give us something pretty like this. I think it's gorgeous, but I think I'll probably buy one more Switch, depending on whether or not the next thing is backwards compatible. I'll either buy the new thing and then do that, or I will buy like a final OLED Switch, because eventually my little first gen one's just going to die.
I think that's an interesting thought. Like, how many Switches will I have purchased by the time this is all said and done? I think this is the most I've bought a console in my life, which granted, I've only bought like 2 of them, but that's already kind of a lot.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do any trade-ins either. I think I was really paranoid too about the data shift stuff. You know, Nintendo's like, it's as usual, like everything's so much harder than it needs to be. So I just had both. So yeah, I don't know what I would do with this OLED. I don't know. I might be convinced to get it. It would be a really cool model, and I do love Splatoon a lot. But
if you play handheld
yeah.
a lot, then I highly recommend it. Like even
I
Tim,
do, but like
Tim, who's a
Tim's taking
weirdo
so long.
freak. I love him to death, but he's like, I play Switch primarily on the TV and not handheld. When he got the OLED model, he was saying this, I think on Gamescast, which is over live today on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames. He said even like he sometimes saves new games to just play on handheld because it's an OLED screen. Because everything pops so much on an OLED screen.
It does look good.
And especially
We'll see.
Splatoon colors, that game's really colorful.
Yeah. I could be convinced, and it wouldn't take much because I am kind of constantly living on the edge of making bad video game financial purchases. But speaking of console launches, I do want to jump down then to a story about Intellivision Amico console still being in development. CEO says this comes from IGN, where Matt Kim writes, it was reported yesterday that the trademark for the Intellivision Amico has been abandoned, spurring speculation that the development had ceased. Now the company's CEO says work on the system is ongoing and that the trademark is very much alive. In an email sent to IGN from Intellivision CEO Phil Adam, the company says it is, quote, still working on the console, and that the United States Patent and Trademark Office is usually pretty slow in updating, and then sent over like a screenshot showing the trademark being live. The Intellivision Amico is a successor to the Intellivision home console from the 1980s. The new system will utilize a remote control style interface with a touchscreen and charging dock. The plan is for the system to feature a library of new family-friendly games, some of which are being developed by teams who created games for the original Intellivision. However, the console has faced numerous delays since it was announced in 2018. The original CEO, Tommy Tallarico, stepped down earlier this year, with former Chief Revenue Officer Phil Adam taking over the position. But for now, at least, according to the company, the Intellivision Amico is still in works. Jared, you mentioned that now is a terrible time to ship a console, so why would you? What is your read on the Intellivision Amico? I also feel like you're the perfect person to talk to about the Intellivision Amico, and it's not just because you're old, because I know you're going to say, is it because I'm old? And that's part, it helps. It probably does contextually help. Like I was talking to Blessing yesterday about Night Trap, and he's like, you're the only not old person I know that's played Night Trap. But yeah.
Okay, well, we talk Night Trap all day. What a fucking grease fire. Thing is, I have very little visibility into this mess. I followed the story along with everybody else. I once saw an Intellivision development kit for the Amico. They do exist. I'll tell you what, man. I'm a big fan of the original Intellivision. It was an amazing piece of hardware with a truly special library of games created by the Blue Sky Rangers, a small team of game developers that were kind of working, just working with this sort of creative genius. It was one of those lightning in a bottle periods where a small number of people made a lot of really great video games, some of which are still great to this day. Shark is still a top 100 video game in my mind, like one of the best video games ever made. And I got the chance at E3 to play old video games with Dave Warhol, one of those guys once. So I hate seeing the legacy of that machine tarnished by branding. I don't know what went wrong, but something went real wrong. And I think this is one of those cases where it's probably a combination of legal damage control and somebody with big dreams and ethics desperately trying to deliver as much as they can. And I am purely speculating on both of those. I don't know that. It's bad, Janet. I mean, some people were real jerks in this process. We've seen the public side of that. Tellerico was not very friendly to the people around him in this process. But ultimately, somebody had a neat idea, maybe, and somewhere along the way, it went terribly wrong. Maybe it was greed, maybe it was mismanagement, maybe it was COVID. I don't know. I'm not going to give you much insight here. This whole thing just makes me feel bad. I have been part of some pretty significant failures in my career. And being a part of a failure is awful because there's usually at least some people in the room that were trying to make it work and thought something good could happen. I especially feel bad for the people who it indicates developed games for this thing who are not going to see any payback for their labor, most likely. You know,
Mhm.
that's who I feel most bad for, and also for anybody who jumped on the bandwagon early. So that's not a lot of insight. It's mostly just sympathy and empathy for an idea that was never good from the start that just got worse and worse as it went on. They shouldn't have tried to create an entire independent console around the Intellivision brand. That was not a good idea. And they overcommitted, and then they got slammed by one of the worst production supply problems ever. I so that's all I got to say about it that's actually informed.
Yeah. Do you think we ever see this console?
You know, I wonder if it won't be like a Tucker torpedo where a certain number of them get made just to fulfill some line in a
Right.
contract somewhere to keep them from getting sued. And they become super rare. And I don't think it'll necessarily be vaporware, but I doubt anyone will have one, really. Um, and maybe there's not even enough money to produce it. They're just trying to hold things together to hit that threshold. Or hoping somebody will rescue them at the last second. You know,
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, Radio Shack sells crypto. Who knows? Maybe we'll
Ah.
all be buying Intellicoin.
That's like, man, look at peering into that multiverse, and I don't like some of the stuff that comes out of there. But yeah, I mean, anything is possible. I am hesitant as to whether or not this ever really gets off the ground. And I think it's one of those tough things where it's like, I don't know what world would necessarily be better for the people involved. Obviously, like, it would suck for the work never really to come to fruition at all, but like, is it better to sacrifice everything just to get it out the door to say that you did it? But yeah, this was rough. And I think even though I never really saw this having insane commercial success because of the pitch had like 8 different things that were very niche. I still wanted to see it happen in the sense that I really like when companies zag and put out weird random stuff that fits a vision that they have that a few people can probably connect with. And to me, that was the Intellivision Amico, or I guess, still is because it could still exist. So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. I don't know whether it's heartening or disheartening to know that it's still in development, but it's been a real struggle. So I don't know. Hopefully better things are around for that team and that project. Yeah, because like you said, it is rough to be part of something that doesn't ever really take off the ground.
I didn't jump in on it, and I'm like the target audience for this thing.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem like a great idea.
Yeah, it always seemed more like a novelty, like something that could, like, oh, this could be cool to say that I have owned, but not necessarily, I think, a ground for really exciting, like, new ideas necessarily. But I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening with that. And speaking of things that are happening, we have CD Projekt Red announces Gwent Rogue Mage, a single-player deck-building roguelike. This is an exclusive preview from IGN and a reveal from IGN, which states, IGN can reveal that the Witcher developer CD Projekt Red will release Gwent Rogue Mage, a single-player deck-building roguelike, tomorrow, July 7th, for PC, iOS, and Android. Rogue Mage is branded as a Gwent expansion and retains the card game's core mechanics, but will be sold separately from the multiplayer original. The standard version will be $9.99, while a premium edition that comes with in-game skins, cosmetics, and card packs for multiplayer game will cost $19.99. We've had it, and then I'm kind of skipping around in the article preview. There's some like interviews and pull quotes and things like that. If you want to check out that full write-up in its entirety, I encourage you to head over to IGN to see all the details on this, but just kind of hitting a couple of the major beats here. We've had the chance to play Rogue Mage ahead of its release date, and it definitely feels reminiscent of the Witcher 3 version of Gwent, though obviously set amid a roguelike format. Much like the originals, players will use Witcher world characters like Dandelion, Zoltan, and Yennefer, but Rogue Mage uses cards from the multiplayer version of Gwent. While this means the mechanics are a bit more complex, cards are presented in simpler packages that aren't nearly as daunting as logging into the multiplayer version for the first time. Tortsov estimated that it will take players more than 30 hours to collect and do everything in the game, and Rogue Mage includes an extensive set of achievements to unlock too, though gameplay loops are split into shorter bursts that can take up to around an hour. Jared, is this something that excites you? Were you a Gwent stan at any point in your life?
Gwent's dope. The original Gwent in Witcher is dope. I love it, and but I hate other people. So the PvP never interested me. Now I have a PvE Gwent I can buy on my phone for $10. So yes, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to play it because Gwent's sweet, and now I don't have to deal with other people.
Yeah, that sounds like a great pitch. I like the idea of it being an easier entry point, which like this preview kind of touches on a little bit. I will say for me personally, like, and I don't have a Gwent background, but deck building roguelike. If you know me, only single player really resonates with me in that statement. I'm always willing to give kind of anything a try, but I probably would sit out on this one. Maybe if like someone else I knew down, like I would try it, but I don't know if I'd want to buy it out the gate. What's the, before this, because you mentioned like, oh, you're definitely downloading it on your phone. What's the last mobile game that you played that you really enjoyed?
Last one, like new game I played, or last one I played and enjoyed? Because like yesterday I was
played
playing.
and enjoyed.
Yeah, I was playing Golf on Mars yesterday. I love Golf on
Nice.
Mars. I'd play that to the end of time. I love premium phone games. I really, really do. And I have an Android, which puts me in a weird ecosystem. I need to just buy an iPad for Apple Arcade because it's so good. Like there's so many good games on Apple Arcade. And the Android ecosystem's a little different. There's some good premium stuff on there. But yeah, like Golf on Mars. What about you?
Oh, I think I did impulse download on this show Subway Surf, but I only played a few seconds of it, so I wouldn't count that. It would probably be Lego Builder's Journey is like the last one that I finished and enjoyed, so I probably would shout out that one. Really beautiful game, Apple Arcade game. I got like the Backbone controller to like play a little bit more comfortably, like have the controller option. I guess too, I also technically played oh my gosh, Unpacking on mobile as well last year, because I played via Xbox Cloud Gaming, which was it didn't run amazing, honestly, for me in that specific game for some reason, but definitely a better service than I think people would assume it is. So if you haven't tried cloud gaming, definitely give it a shot. But it was just cool having like Game Pass on my phone. I think it's only going to get better as time goes on. So yeah, but I'm definitely a fan of mobile games. Would like to dip into that ecosystem more. There's so many ecosystems everywhere all the time. And speaking of things that are everywhere all the time, let's talk about Marvel's Avengers, because Greg works here. So like, let's just shout that out real quick. And it's She-Hulk in Marvel's Avengers. Streamer accidentally leaks new character while the devs watch, which this is from IGN. That's a hilariously, and that is what happened. But the way that headline is written is very amusing. And the article reads, a streamer has leaked that She-Hulk is officially coming to Marvel's Avengers while live on Xbox's Twitch channel with a Crystal Dynamics developer. Technique TV was guest streaming on the channel with Avengers lead designer Brian Wagner. I might have butchered that. I probably did. For less than an hour before he let slip that She-Hulk was coming to the game, with a clip being shared by Miller on Twitter. Despite there being no official word the character was coming, Technique asked if fans wanted a fun fact about She-Hulk. I don't know if I can say this. I think it was public knowledge, he said. I'll just say this. I don't like the face that Brian is making. And I really do feel for everybody involved in this moment, because who among us hasn't flown a little close to the embargo side? Now, most of us don't get burned by it, but like we've all had those moments where you're like, yeah, I mean, and you just kind of like just gloss over something, and then later you're like, can I say this? Is this out? Is this like what? Yeah. And when in doubt, you always go with no. Yeah. Right. Oh, you know, if you take one lesson from if you're not sure, if it's not a confident yes, just don't even go for it.
Don't say it. Yep.
And again, I don't know how Greg lives on the internet forums or something, but Greg pointed out that Forbes a while ago, back in I think December,
I remember She-Hulk being leaked a while back.
Yeah. That leak had arrived earlier, and in Forbes coverage from Paul Tassi, like he mentions this, She-Hulk arriving as a hero in Marvel's Avengers has been rumored for ages, as voice lines referencing Jennifer Walters have been data mined. But yesterday, leaker Miller, who I trust at Baseline, said that She-Hulk will be voiced by Krizia Bajos, a veteran actress who has voiced other characters, Halo Infinite, Second Us 2, Cyberpunk, and upcoming Gotham Knights. So this definitely has been, rumored for a long time, arguably leaked earlier, and this is just yet another kind of confirmation of that. But just to shout out that She-Hulk is coming to Marvel's Avengers. So if you're still playing that, or you're like, I want to see what this is about because I want to have a closer connection to Greg Miller, there you go. You know, like
Greg and Andrew Goldfarb are stoked for sure.
yeah. So like,
Good-
shout out to that.
good for them. Yeah, good for them. I've been on the marketing end of a situation like this,
Oh no.
very similar, and where somebody made a mistake and released something like this, and it is so hard because the companies have these synergistic, I hate to use that word, or relationship with influencers, and often those relationships really are good for both parties.
Mhm.
But marketers want to control messaging, and influencers want to entertain and inform their audiences. And just on volume, sooner or later, somebody slips up.
Yep.
And it really is often just a slip up, or just an accidental post, or it could literally be just getting the timing wrong on something embargoed. And God, it's just awful for everybody involved. Just terrible. So I have nothing but sympathy for everybody here. It's awful. And as for Marvel's Avengers, yeah, Greg Miller and Goldfarb can go play that together because who the hell cares?
Yeah, there you go. But She-Hulk is so far away. If I want to know what's coming to mom and grab shops today, where would I look?
I'd look at the official list of upcoming software across each and every platform as listed by the Kind of Funny Games Daily Show hosts each and every weekday.
Yeah. Oh god, I hit the lights off to the side of me. Out today, Let's Play Oink Games on PC and Matchpoint Tennis Champions, PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One /X/S, Series X and S. So there you go. Cop those if you feel so inclined. Let's dip into your wrong real fast to see if we had any egregious statements. And we do not. Just a fun fact, and then just empty slots for some reason. So shout out to that. Tomorrow's hosts are Thursday. We got Greg and Tim. I was like, is today Wednesday? Today's Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Today's
Okay, we got Greg
It's
and
Wednesday,
Tim.
my dudes.
Friday, we got Greg and Bless, unless this is inaccurate, in which case none of those things are true. And if you're watching live on Twitch after this, Mike and the Jabroni boys are playing The Cycle. And if you want to catch that stream later, make sure you subscribe to youtube.com/KindaFunnyPlays. This has been Kinda Funny Games Daily, where each and every weekday live right here on twitch.tv/KindaFunnyGames, we run you through the nerdy news you need to know about. We have a Patreon post show for those that are subbed at the silver level of patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. So stick around for that. Otherwise, until next time, Game Daily.